Hello and welcome to The Trade. Reserve Bank Governor Michelle Bullock has said its policy setting board will need to factor in developments in the labour market and inflation when it meets next week. Addressing economists last night, she said, "So we'll do our best guess at what we think we know. On that basis, we can make some decisions about whether or not there's some more interest rate cuts in that to address perhaps the employment market, or whether we're a little bit worried about the inflation rate." President Trump has announced a series of deals on trade and critical minerals with 4 Southeast Asian nations during his Asian tour. This comes ahead of his meeting with Chinese President Xi in South Korea on Thursday, where tariffs and Chinese rare earths export controls will be discussed. And Argentina's bonds, stocks and currency have surged after President Javier Milei's party won an overwhelming victory in the midterm election, with voters strongly backing his free market reforms and austerity measures. And ahead of this week's Federal Reserve meeting, the US 2-year Treasury yield is around 3.5%, while the 10-year yield is down to 4%. The Australian 3-year government bond yields rose to 3.46%, with markets pricing in a 35% chance the cash rate will be cut by 25 basis points at next week's meeting, with 2 more cuts in the easing cycle. The US dollar index is down 0.1%. The Aussie dollar has climbed to 65.6 US cents. Now let's start with the big question. There's an age-old debate among traders. What is more important, mindset or skill set? Joining us now to discuss is Mandi Rafsendjani from Trading Psychology. Thanks for being there. So what do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sue. I always find it interesting. I believe it's like asking me what is more important, my arms or my legs, because they have different functions, right? And we need both in order to fully function as a human being in our lives. So I believe that we need both, because without a strong mindset and a healthy mindset, even the best strategy with an edge will not work, because we will find ways to sabotage ourselves. Because, in the end, the market is a mirror. It reflects our thoughts and fears and emotions back to us. And so that's why one doesn't work without the other, in my opinion.
Now, can you give us an example of a real-life case that you've dealt with?
Yes, so many. I recently worked with a trader that was very interesting. He's an Australian trader, very good trader. And he traded the breakout of the XJO back in July, when it reached the all-time high. And he was, putting in his stop loss, and he wanted to hold the trade a little longer. But the market kept going sideways. And I believe I have a little chart for you guys also. Yes, you can see the market kept going sideways, and the weekend was in between. And during the weekend, he had a fight with his wife. His wife said, "You are never here. You always work. You should spend more time with the family and the kids. Everything is on me." So he felt very unappreciated. And on Monday morning, when the market did this little tiny dip, he lost his nerve. He got out of the trade. He thought, "I'm just waiting what is happening tomorrow." And then, of course, you can see the next day the market rallied up and went all the way to 9,000. And his strategy didn't allow to re-enter, because, as I said, he's a breakout trader, and he wasn't in the right mindset anyway. So you can see that it was very bitter for him, leaving all that money on the table. Even though he had a solid plan and he had a stop loss in place and he has an edge, he knows that. But the emotions played havoc on him and sabotaged his beautiful trade.
And so why did this argument with his wife affect his trading so much?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So when we have an argument with a loved one, may it be parents, kids, especially partners, many feel emotionally challenged, right? And so for everyone, it's something different. At first, I thought for him it was the fear of rejection. But as we were diving deeper, it turned out it was actually the fear of losing control. And that was based on his personal experiences in life. Now, when we have the experience of losing control, what we are doing as a coping mechanism, we try to gain control in other areas of life. And so this is exactly what he did. So he was emotionally compromised there. And he wasn't reacting to the market, he was reacting to the feeling of being out of control in his personal life. And he was feeling unappreciated because he said, why can't she see I'm working so hard? So he felt like he couldn't, no matter what he did, wasn't good enough. And it's also an experience of not feeling in control. Now with trading, it's really easy, right? The click of a mouse button, and then instantly we have the illusion that we are back in control. But then, as you could see, the market did its own thing, rallied up without him, and then the frustration was really, really strong. So he used his feelings as a trigger to exit the trade and not his strategy. And that's a perfect example of how when our mindset is not in the best shape, we sabotage our best trading strategies.
Now, how were you able to help him? And do you have strategies generally for traders? It's a very high pressure environment.
Yes, absolutely. And for everyone, it's a little bit different. So it's hard to give a 1, 2, 3 step for everyone. But as a guideline, what we can look at in the first step is the awareness that we are emotionally compromised, right? That's being really realistic about it. And then looking at how do I deal with these situations when I'm feeling emotionally compromised? What are my coping strategies? And for someone like him, so in that moment when he had the fight with the wife, what he did was he withdrew from the fight. He went to his man cave and he didn't continue the conversation. So it was kind of left open from the initial conversation. Now, he did the same the next day, didn't he? On Monday morning, he withdrew from the trade. Now, when you have a trader who is more forward going, who would have a bitter argument with the wife and fight about it, so being a little bit more aggressive, then these are usually the guys who would go on tilt after this kind of experience, right? So understand what your coping mechanisms are. And when you have a coping mechanism, this is usually the fear of a future regret. So feeling the fear of looking stupid later and that the wife was right, something like that. So what is the fear of the future regret? And then when you understand how these things happen and what these are, then you start feeling more in control again. This is, I found really valid for most successful traders. They have the need to be in control. So when they understand what was going on in their mindset, that's helping them a lot. Now, when you have understood that, then you need to work through the emotions. So for some, it's that they put the emotions mentally into a briefcase and put it outside the trading room, and then they are fully able to focus because they can categorize in their brain the trading and the family time. For others, is they have to work through the experiences and have to really gain clarity in how they can manage the situation outside of trading. So we need to learn emotional intelligence, otherwise the emotions will continue to control our trading decisions. And that's what it all comes down to. And most haven't learned that at home. So that's my job most of the time.
Mandi Rafsendjani from Trading Psychology. What an interesting discussion. Hopefully people can take a lot away from that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's it for The Trade.